The current data is about 60% of humanity living in cities. My work is primarily about building capacity through research, through cooperation, through economic and educational exchanges. There's a fundamental difference when we look at the developed world cities, or what we call the developed world cities, which came out of industrial revolution. So if we look at the cities in the past, 18th or 19th century cities, a lot of cities before industrial revolution were built, developed and managed at a different level. Post-industrial revolution, cities change. What is really important, whether we talk about Sydney, whether we talk about San Francisco, or whether we talk about London, New York, any of the cities must have their own identity. Delhi really is stretching, or what we call bursting at the seam on an infrastructure level.
Hello and welcome to one-on-one interview of Urban Update. My guest today has spent decades at the intersection of urban thought and urban action. He is not merely an academic who theorizes about cities from a distance. He has shaped city strategy, influenced global policy, and sat at the very tables where decisions about our urban future are made. Sunil Dubey holds a PhD in governance and public assets from the University of Sydney. He has been an adjunct academic at both University of Sydney and University of New South Wales since 2008. He currently holds a strategy and innovation position in the New South Wales government and serves as an advisory member at ETI, Sorbonne University, Paris. His global footprint is remarkable as Metropolis Ambassador and advisor. From 2007 to 2018, he represented over 120 member cities at the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and the World Bank. Few people have seen the city in all its complexity from as many angles as Sunil Dubey has. In a time when climate pressures, rapid urbanization, and widening inequalities are redefining how cities grow, his perspective becomes even more urgent. So today, I want to ask him, what is the future of urbanization? What lessons can India draw from Australia? Or our urbanization is completely different? And lastly, how will artificial intelligence alter the way our cities evolve? Welcome, Mr. Dubey, to Urban Update's studio. And before we start talking about urbanization, I would like to know from you who you are, because for our audience, and what you do, what has been your experience in urban space?
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you for inviting me at the All India Institute of Local Self-Government. It's a great privilege to be part of this institute and talking to you when you are celebrating your 100th year. So my first point is congratulations. There is a very few institutions in the world, urban institutions, who have completed 100 years. And the journey of cities is really aligning with the vision of your city. My name is Sunil Dubey. I was born in this beautiful city of Delhi. So I have a huge privilege of knowing cities firsthand from the ground. My adopted city where I live now is Sydney, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And we are very proud to say that Sydney offers a lot of wonderful living opportunities. There's enormous wellness there. There's enormous environmental credentials in that cities. What we do to make cities better is something I'm very passionate about. Every city goes through the journey. And now we look at it, how cities can learn from each other, support each other, and work with each other to make the humanity a better place. Because cities is somewhere where majority of humanity is currently living. The current data is about 60% of humanity living in cities. My work is primarily about building capacity through research, through cooperation, through economic and educational exchanges. And I'm very pleased that I've got the journey of both the developing cities where I was born, developed cities where I live, and bridge the gap between these simply for humanity and livability for every citizen in the city to have the best opportunities and best potential to contribute and make an economic and sustainable proposition for themselves, their families, communities, and their cities.
Mr. Dubey, you have lived in Delhi. You were born here, and then you are living in your adopted city, Sydney. I want to understand from you, not just from the perspective of urban infrastructure and skyline, what is the difference between cities in India and those in developed world? What has been your experience working in cities? What difference you find?
Very important question, and something where we look at the cities around the world, developing cities, developed cities, in transition cities. I would probably put Delhi and a number of other Indian cities in transition. There's a fundamental difference when we look at the developed world cities, or what we call the developed world cities, which came out of industrial revolution. So if we look at the cities in the past, 18th or 19th century cities, a lot of cities before industrial revolution were built, developed and managed at a different level. Post-industrial revolution, cities change. And majority of the urban planning patterns, majority of urban planning strategies, both development and operating cities, are still driven by that idea. I would like to differ slightly that cities, when we start to look at it from learning each other, have to be very careful. My city where I was born in Delhi was a beautiful city, still is a beautiful city. It has got a population problem. It has got a problem of infrastructure, basic services, but that can be overcome. What is really important, whether we talk about Sydney, whether we talk about San Francisco, or whether we talk about London, New York, or any of the cities must have their own identity. This is not going to be a story of every city in India, but Delhi is a very special city, and I always consider Delhi that we've already seen the 7 layers of Delhi has gone through various historical contexts. The current layer of city, like Delhi, really is stretching, or what we call bursting at the seam on an infrastructure level. And that is primarily driven by a huge population and the migration in the cities. So my answer to that question, how do I see the difference of a city where we don't even 5 million people in Sydney versus a city like Delhi where you've already reached almost a population of Australia, around 25 million people living there, that we have to look at it in a clear perspective about how we are going to look at urban infrastructure and offer something to the people where the attractiveness of the Delhi is there, but it is reducing that pressure on the urban infrastructure, particularly on the basic services like cleanliness, like road congestions, like some of the greenery which is disappearing, and come up with a holistic model. I'm sure the precedents for Delhi would come from other cities like Tokyo, like Seoul, where they have managed to get a big population and still kept the identity, the culture and the history of the city intact. So in that regard, I would say Delhi is going through these challenges. But bear in mind, some of these
My
challenges...
question is about governance and management. Where are we lacking? What is the problem that our cities are really facing in managing our civic services and management of infrastructure?
So 2 parts of the governance. I think in governance, Delhi has got some good precedents because after all, you are managing 25 million people coming and going. You also have a very strong economic base in Delhi. Let's not forget, Delhi is a huge economic engine, it's a growth engine. Compared to Mumbai, Delhi and all the cities, they're huge financial benefit for people. When
You
it
are
comes
especially
to
talking about the NCR region?
NCR region, yes, because now Delhi is considered as an NCR and proximity of all these places. So I think the governance is going to be challenging because still at the core of this, unlike the developed cities you mentioned earlier, your local urban bodies are not empowered to make a decision.
We have mayor in Delhi which has 1 year term.
Yes. So these are some of the governance questions. We have to put it at the forefront of this debate. How do we reform it? Because we can't follow the governance model of pre-1947 to have a mayor only for one term. The governors or the mayors are very powerful people in Delhi. And I think they should be given.
Sorry, but I disagree with you that mayor of Delhi is not powerful. In Delhi, the chief minister, the parastatal agencies, or the lieutenant governor, they wield more power than the mayor. So I think that mayoral term should be more than 1 year, and there should be some empowerment of mayors in Delhi.
Influence and empowering people to make that change. That the mayor should have some operational capacity, not only the term, but also a freedom to do things because they are the best to know about their cities. While the states are very influential and powerful, to make the change at a ground level, for instance, your garbage collection, for instance, your water-related issues, for instance, your traffic, mayors and urban local bodies are far more powerful and far more aware of where the issues are than possibly your state or national level people. And I think the fastest way to make the change, what our research, what our global comparative indexes are showing, empower people who have got a lot of understanding at the ground level, not at a policy level, not at a top level. People who have got a real understanding at a ground level to challenges and hopefully better solutions.
Now let me turn to Australia, especially Sydney where you are living. I would like to know from you what is the governance system in Australia, and are their mayors powerful, how they are managing their cities, and where we are faltering, and do we have any scope to learn from Australian cities?
Wonderful, thank you. I just want to put this a little bit in perspective. The entire population of Australia, it's a continent in itself, is about 25 million people, give and take about 5%. We are talking of Delhi NCR is going beyond 25 million people if you look at some of the data coming up now. So we have to be very careful about doing such comparative thing. We are very lucky that our mayors are reasonably powerful. They don't have a term limit. Just to give you an idea, the mayor of Sydney City is just completing 10 years.
Okay.
Without
election?
With elections.
With election means 5-year term, then re-election?
5 years, and now this is her third term. So she's going beyond 10 years term. But they're also very powerful in terms of executing projects. They do have their own revenue, but they also get state and federal revenue. So one is, you're not limited by 1 term or 2 term or 1 or 2 years. Second thing is, our mayors and local bodies, what we call the councils, are very closely associated on day-to-day issues of the citizens. So they know what problems are emerging, and before it becomes a big challenge, the information which has got a proper process gets up to the policymakers. Having said that, we still have challenges. We still have challenges of revenue, we still have challenges of environment. Urban heat is a big issue. Number of cities in Australia still have flooding issues, still have issues related to transport. But the governance is better because we give a proper emphasis to the urban local bodies and empower them. And things get done a little bit faster.
Of course, there is a difference between urbanization in Australia and India because Delhi's NCR population, if you look at it, is approximately, like you mentioned, is 25 million. And Australia's entire population is 25 million. But Sydney, where you live, it has a population of 5 million, means 20% of Australia's population is living in Sydney. Sydney is a primate city. But in India, we do not have cities of that size in that sense, if we compare to the proportion of population living in our cities. M.N. Butch, the former vice chairman of DDA and also the National Commission on Urbanization vice chairman person, he said that Delhi is a pimple on face of urban India. And I would also like to come on the something related topic. Our urbanization looks messy because when we look at our state level cities, big cities in our states like Bengaluru, the biggest city in Karnataka, Mumbai in Maharashtra, Lucknow, one of the biggest in Uttar Pradesh, Chennai in Tamil Nadu. So these cities are the biggest cities and also the capital. But when we look at Australia or United States of America, they have decided, I think after so much thought, that their capital city will not be the biggest city or the most popular or those cities which are attracting maximum people, urban migrants. For example, New York. New York is a very big city where migrants are coming from all over the country and also from all around the world. But Washington is the capital. Same, if you look at their state also, New York, if you're talking about New York state, the New York City is not the capital, but Albany is. Same in Australia. Canberra is the capital of Australia. So do you think when we are planning our cities, we think in silos? We talk about, when we are talking about smart cities, we talk about smart city mission. When we are talking about water supply, we focus on Jal Jeevan mission. But all these issues are not connected under one policy. Do you think we lack here?
Very interesting question you put it in terms of Sydney is, for instance, 20% of the Australian population. That's very true. In fact, our top 3 cities, in fact, if we look at the top 4 cities in Australia, they almost have more than 80% of the entire country's population living in this world. While this sounds like a good opportunity, it's also a big challenge and a big risk because all these cities are attracting all the people from outside and migrants, but what's happening is also doing a disservice to a lot of smaller cities. So we have to be very careful, and I refer to Professor Butch's comment, Delhi is a pimple on Indian context. I think in a lot of ways that could be numbers-wise or geographical numbers-wise could be true. But also its influence is very important. New York may be very small footprint, Manhattan may be very small footprint, but look at its influence, what it does not only in US, but influence of New York globally. So we have to be very careful when we analyze these cities to say in geographical or physical area sense they are small, but big population. I think in Indian urbanization, I also want to submit one recommendation. The urbanization in India is very different how the world has seen the urbanization.
Yes.
And we have to be very conscious of that urbanization in India, and this is my view, looking at all the data and the research and number of cities around the world, does not relate to issues of the Western cities. I want to put this constructive critique that in fact, Indian urbanization should look at cities' infrastructure and operations going more closer to home and look at how China has done its urbanization, how they have managed to keep their cities so efficient in a number of ways. Of course, there are problems in China. How Singapore is doing things, how they have managed to create, and we have to start thinking even big city like Delhi in a smaller chunks and then try to integrate it. I mean, enormous work happening in Malaysia, for example, in Vietnam, And they are the stories which should be much closer to urbanization stories of India. I think I submit that sometimes we are too prompt to compare Delhi or Mumbai to New York or London or to other places. I think the comparison is wrong. I think our comparison, in my view, for mega cities in India should be closer to Tokyo, should be closer to Seoul, should be closer to Singapore, for instance. And looking at those cities would provide solutions for us and possibly for the Indian context. And that's something I have seen through a number of research, that once people in the cities which aspired to go closer to the developed world or the Western world cities, the influence or the outcome were very little, negligible almost. But when cities went closer to Singapore, for instance, closer to Tokyo, closer to Seoul, their impact was much higher because their issues and their challenges are very recent. Look at the story of Seoul. Only 3 decades ago, they were not very dissimilar to a number of cities in India. Look at Singapore. Only 3 decades ago, it wasn't the cleanest city. What they have done, the transformation, is much more important to Indian cities than comparing Indian cities to London, Barcelona, Paris. I think that comparison has to be really, really much more debated, grounded, and then looking at the precedents. And that could make some substantial change, because I feel Seoul presents a wonderful example for Indian cities, big cities, mega cities, very efficient.
For you, when you look at Indian cities have multiple problems. We have issue of sanitation, cleanliness, solid waste management, last mile connectivity, and so on and so forth. If I ask you, as an urbanist and urban expert, what is the biggest problem Indian cities are facing today? I mean to ask because if we look at, okay, this one problem we have to solve, just focus on this and everything will follow. All other problems will be taken care of if we address this particular issue.
It's a very valid question. It's a question I have noticed has come on a number of occasions. 2006 and 7 when JNNURM was established. That was the primary questions. How do we look at these challenges and what can we do in terms of the priorities? Where do we put the priorities? Of course, the governance is a big priority. And again, governance in all the urbanization stories can only be solved when you empower the most basic unit, urban local bodies. By definition, if you look at it, that's where you need an empowerment. Not at state level, not at a top policy level. Local. That's India's biggest challenge. And you have to empower it by way of governance. My second offer in this area, a lot of issues which we might think is a policy-related issues, if we start to scratch the surface and start to look at the real issue, it's actually an operational issue. I'm quite certain if you look at Housing for All policy, has got some wonderful framework why housing is important for every person in India. Why is it so critical for the economic empowerment of the nation? But the issue is more operational. Issue is how we are going to get all the resources together. How are you going to get even bricks and mortar and steel and cement together to build all these houses? I mean, for a small country like Australia, we are having a housing challenge. We are having a housing problems where we can't even build up, 10,000, 20,000 houses. Imagine an issue of housing in India. So I just want to say, sometimes we get too much and we romanticize this governance issue and policy issues. I feel a lot of issues in Indian cities are more operational and can be solved by putting more focus on operations, urban management solutions, efficiencies, and bringing a new technology. I think India has to work very closely to story of Chinese urbanization, because they have managed to solve some of these complex problems. For instance, last mile. You mentioned about last mile. You only have to look at it how China moves during the lunar festival. Millions of people, hundreds of millions of people in a given time, and yet efficiency around that and logistic challenge is wonderfully solved. Nowhere on the earth this issue has been solved better than China. So why can't we learn from those urbanization stories? But again, I want to emphasize, Abhishek, a lot of issues, despite the best governance and policies, are operational challenges in India.
You talked about operation and implementation. Recently, we were in a conference in Bhopal. It was Sustainable Urbanization in Madhya Pradesh. When we asked the participants, those were additional commissioners and commissioners from different cities, small ones and big ones, what is the biggest issue that they are facing? They said they are operating at 40% capacity. That means that 60% people are not there. So how will they manage their cities? Means there is shortage of talented human resources at the local level. That's why they are always on a firefighting mode. There is a flood, they have to address this particular issue. Some VIPs are coming, they have to ensure that everything is in order. And there are festivals, they have to ensure that all religious places or all arrangements are made. So do you think that this problem can be addressed using technology? Because recently in Delhi, we had Artificial Intelligence Summit in Delhi. Do you think that if we employ or deploy artificial intelligence in urban management, we will be able to address these issues?
Well, there's no magic bullet. Let's just start with that premise that there's no magic bullet. There never has been. I mean, all the story of cities around the world, any city we look at it has improved over the time. So my first comment to your question about what can technology do, I think biggest thing technology does, it cuts a lot of barriers and gives you the fact then and there in front of you. What you do with that fact, what you do with that data, the information is entirely up to you. Some cities can take the traffic congestion data to make substantial changes, put some framework and resources to manage it. Other cities may not look at the same way, the same data. They might wait for something happens and then make some changes, whether it's a road width, last mile, metro system, whatever
Even
it is.
Housing based on
Yes.
traffic data.
So technology is a great enabler. It cuts down a lot of silos. Let me offer you one example which is so important and gives us a valuable lesson in India. Imagine you had no mobile technology and you have to connect the entire Indian nation using poles and wires and telephone exchanges, people working. Just go only 2 decades ago. You know, when people like Mr. Sam Pitroda and other wonderful people who bought all these things at the forefront. Imagine how long would it take for a place like India to connect our villages, to connect our cities, to connect every vendor, every business person. You would need a lot of resources, you'll need a lot of wires, telephone exchanges, poles, everything. People, what technology has done, bought out something called mobile phone. It cuts so many layers. Can it happen in challenges like waste management? Can it happen in providing reliable water sources, last mile? I don't know. But what technology is beginning to do throughout the world is to give you a solution that trains, transports, tweaking up some of the timing of the workings, can reduce and make substantial changes. The most prominent ones you see throughout the world today is just tweaking up a little bit of a timing. That not everyone has to start at 9 o'clock and finish the work at 5 o'clock. These are policy-related questions which everyone, not only just the city mayors or people in the state, everyone has to start thinking that can we start work at 7 o'clock and finish 3 o'clock? This doesn't need some very scientific knowledge. It simply needs a willingness. That why all schools, where is it written that all schools must operate at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock and must finish? Which universal principle says that? But yet, if you apply the principle of transformation, getting people on this journey, you might have a little less transport issues without even making any big changes.
So I think what Rishi Sunak, the former Prime Minister of United Kingdom, humorously pointed out that AI can do a lot of things, but it cannot solve the problem of traffic in Delhi. He said that yesterday. Do you think that AI will not be able to address some of the critical challenges our cities are facing?
Well, I just want to offer it to Mr. Sunak. I think he was very lucky that his car was very easily moving. Imagine, Mr. Sunak, if you have to wait on the other side where every traffic was blocked and you're sitting for, 15, 20 minutes just waiting for another VIP car to pass. Now, jokes aside, I think AI is a great enabler. But it comes down to what do we do with the AI?
There were many reports coming out of AI summit that India had. There was one tech investor, Vinod Khosla, Silicon Valley tech investor.
Yes.
That he's
great friend of Elon Musk.
He said one thing that by 2030, half of India's IT and BPO jobs will vanish. This is very critical situation because 7% of India's GDP comes from BPO and IT industry. My question is related to that because cities have always been the magnet, or you can say the centers of employment where people came for earning their livelihood, whether it was industrialization. Now in IT industry, they are coming to, like in Bengaluru, you can see Noida or Gurugram. Do you think this equation changing means when we look at maybe 10 years down the line or 15, 20 years down the line, we will not see cities as a hub of employment, or our perception of cities is going to change?
Wonderful question. Look, cities are not going to go anywhere. Despite AI revolution or no AI revolutions, cities are here for a long term. More people would keep coming to the cities, whether short term or a long term, that's a debate. We will have it in future. But cities are here, and cities would only prosper day by day. Cities would have its own environmental challenge. Let's just be very open about it. But cities are also where a lot of evolution thinking, a lot of solutions are emerging. So respectfully, I do see Mr. Khosla's point that a lot of jobs would disappear. That's true. That's absolutely true. But let's look at it something like banking. You go back a few decades ago, banking was done by a teller. People used to take a lot of money, go to the banks, put there, you have a personal contact, all that has disappeared. Yet, in banking and financial market, we generated a lot more employment than we ever had in the tellers and what we call the bricks and mortar banks. With AI, we don't know. I think what the real issue with AI in our cities and other parts of the world is, in human history, I would rather rely on Mr. Henry Kissinger's proposition. We have never seen such a challenge as AI and machine learning. I think the last time in humanity we faced this challenge when printing press and books were generated. Because what's happening in AI, the real challenge is we are challenging human mind and its capacity. Machine learning. Yes. For that, we are not even grasping what that machine learning can and cannot do for us. That's what happened. When knowledge became universal, when ordinary people had access to books because of the printing press and that technology, all of a sudden, knowledge was not a domain of very few people in our society. In Indian society, for instance, for centuries, only certain communities like Brahmins has an absolute exclusive right on the knowledge, because they could translate and they could transfer from one person to another. But here comes the book. Everyone can recite the same mantra, irrespective of where you are. In machine learning, we are seeing first time those challenges, because all the technology revolutions which has happened in the last 4 to 5 decades has never challenged us to start thinking about challenging our mind, challenging the capacity of human brain. Machine learning is giving that opportunity. I also want to say, in terms of India, and when you look at the cities versus rural, I would see this as a real opportunity. And I see the glimpse of that opportunity coming out in places like Kerala. I have been recently hearing about urbanization policy coming out of Kerala, which people like Professor K.T. Ravindran has worked extensively, that these urbanization policies or urbanization strategies are giving us a solution to start thinking that don't let the urbanization or the concept of urbanization only limited to the physical constraint of city. Indian cities, Indian urbanization is unprecedented. And we cannot limit by the boundaries, the physical boundaries of the cities. Indian cities would play this game, the wonderful game of village versus cities. Our heart lies in the village, but everything else lies in the cities.
Yeah, true.
And we have to accept that reality. We have to accept that India offers the best opportunity for the world, that you can live a village life. Gandhi's mantra of India lies in villages, but equally you can be economically so prosperous that you can actually work and contribute in the cities. And I think that story of urbanization has never been experienced or even done anywhere in the world. India has that opportunity to have the best of two worlds. AI, in my view, is the biggest catalyst of change to make it happen, that India can have that story fulfilled for the rest of the world by putting some serious examples. So I see that AI as an opportunity.
Definitely, I completely agree with you that artificial intelligence can enable better urban management and how we manage our cities. But do you see in coming future that AI or robots are cleaning our streets or doing some of the critical basic jobs that urban local bodies do, that the machines will be doing? Mechanical robots cleaning our streets. Are we seeing this in very short time, maybe in 5 years' time or 2 years' time?
Well, it's happening already. It's all happening already. I think, Abhishek,
right now, we may have seen some of the pilot projects where artificial intelligence and machines are being used for urban management issues. But my question is about, are we going to see this happening in small cities, maybe in you recently visited Gorakhpur or in Kolkata or Udaipur or our even smaller cities which are not having that human resources and also financial resources. Do you think this is happening in recent future?
Very, very important point you made. And in earlier conversation, you referred something called resource constraint. And if I just refer to your comment about that there was a shortfall of 60%, the capacity, there was only 40%. I propose, what's wrong with using robots when we don't have that 60% gap? If we keep on waiting for the human intervention, a real person to come and get our cities, mountains and mountains of garbage, what's wrong with using a robot to clean that cities? I think we have to come up with a solution which is acceptable to ensure that our labor is not taken out of the equation. They are an integral part. But India, cities in India, urbanization story in India really needs a combination of robotics and people. And again, if there's a 60% gap existing in capacity and part of that can be fulfilled by robots or using any technology, I would welcome that solution to make our city prosper and clean.
My last question to you is about the future, the urban future. Because when we look at history, the evolution of cities, London, Paris, all these cities after in 16th century and later, when they emerged as the power center, the industrialization was the core of these cities. Similarly, in India after independence and even before that, some of the cities were known for their industries and the people they attracted, because people went to these cities for jobs, for employment. But in later years after liberalization in 1990s, this changed completely, because IT came into picture, and we have seen that the cities like Bengaluru and Hyderabad came up front as a big urban centers in India. So now what will be the core of cities? My question is this, because do you see that people will go back to villages because they need not necessarily need to work in cities and stay there? Will people move to villages and do stuff and just maybe remotely do things?
Look, cities would change. Cities would change and they would adopt what's happening at that particular time. And the best example, if I can quote it to you, is let's look at the city of Detroit. You know, only a few decades ago, city of Detroit was the automobile hub of the world, a city which was the poster child for a number of industrial cities around the world. By 2020, that entire dream of Detroit was demolished. Has it stopped Detroit in reinventing? No. Detroit is now using innovation, transforming a very large scale industrial complexes to make up and coming up with the more innovative solutions. They're getting into watches, they're getting into more entrepreneurial approach of a small technology thing. So my proposition that cities would always emerge, they'll always reinvent themselves. And that could be something around industrial, around productivity, around service core. I mean, if IT has gone from the city, it doesn't mean that your city has to stop functioning. Cities would emerge. If they are not economic hubs, if they are not financial hubs like Mumbai or New York or Hong Kong, they would turn themselves, because the power of cities are from within, and that power is from people. Very few cities have disappeared from the map, but most of the cities have reinvented, and that would happen with Indian cities. Indian cities, because we still have a lot more opportunities, because what Indian cities have, which is the most fundamental for any city, is the people. The most basic denominator of any economic proposition is the people. And you do have a lot of people in India. So I think for next century or so, I would say this is just the beginning of Indian cities story and Indian urbanization. And you still have a lot more time to work through it. And I think the people would evolve. The citizens, the cities, the governance, the operation will all evolve. Now, you do have a lot of technology intervention opportunities like AI coming into planning, AI coming into operations, your health system, your traffic, which will give you better leverage to actually make life better in cities.
So on this optimistic note, thank you, Mr. Dubey. It was a pleasure talking to you. And I'm sure our viewers have gained insight on how technology is changing our cities, what will be the urban future. They must have got some idea that cities are here to stay. They will be They will be always there. Their form can change, their core can change, but they are going to be there at the core of our evolution history that we are seeing. Thank you very much for your insight on this.
Thank you, Abhishek.
So this was Mr. Sunil Dubey, a professor, an academic, and urban practitioner, who was talking about how artificial intelligence is changing cities, what India can do to manage its cities its cities better, and the future of urban services, how it will look like. So he has given us insight, and I'm sure that with artificial intelligence, with enabling environment in our cities will become livable, our cities will become more efficient, and if you have any question related to artificial intelligence or the changing face of our cities, please do write to us. And if you like this interview, like, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned to Urban Update.